Let's take you to the ENCA Money Desk now, and Devin Murugan is standing by with an update. So, Devin, the state-owned land bank has defaulted on debt. How significant is this?
Julius, good afternoon. Well, analysts I'm speaking to say that it's a very significant event, but it's unlikely that government will let this one fall through. More on that in a moment, but here's the context. South Africa's Land Bank has confirmed it defaulted on a bond repayment due yesterday, despite trying to avoid doing so. The move has now triggered cross-default on certain other bonds. The Land Bank default could have adverse implications on the bank's ability to extend loans to the most vulnerable farmers, and this could threaten food security. The state-owned bank today advised its bondholders that it was negotiating with creditors on the default triggered by its current liquidity challenges. The bank had approximately 738 million rand of debt scheduled to mature before the end of the month.
The land bank default is actually quite material, and it's the first time we've seen a truly large institution go into default in South Africa, and it's a very big state-owned enterprise. So the materiality of this fact can't be overemphasized, and unfortunately there are a few more still to come. The government will stand in and assist the land bank, cannot afford for this state-owned entity to actually collapse. It is far too important within the South African economy and obviously directly in the agriculture.
That's Wayne McCurry there from FNB Wealth and Investments. All right, so let's look at the markets. They look set to close the week in the negative this afternoon. The local market is about 0.75% down after a fairly good run yesterday. Nelson Nair from Sasfin joins me now. Nelson, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. So is the local market influenced at the moment mainly by global COVID responses, or does the domestic response matter? Because we've had that domestic stimulus package being announced and then some easing of the lockdown restrictions also announced yesterday. How does it feed on this?
Yeah, good afternoon, Devin. I think the different sectors of the markets are being influenced by different factors. Certainly, the rand, commodity prices, which affect our resources in particular, and some of the big industrials, which is, I suppose, exogenous to what's taking place locally. That has had an impact on the resources and the industrial sector. The financial sector, which is the hardest hit sector on the JSE this year for some time now, very much impacted by what's taking place locally. The announcement of the problems at SAA, of course, and now more recently, the land bank default. I think taking center stage. I think this is viewed by investors as probably the beginning of a little bit of a liquidity crisis that we might see, while these lockdown restrictions are still very much in place.
I want to talk about that land bank default, Elias, and how does government handle this one with other priorities at the moment? I mean, we've got this COVID-19 issue to deal with. What do you make of government's response to the land bank?
So I think one has to understand how this came about, or how this could potentially came about. Initially, it was being sold as an administration sort of glitch, but I think right now it seems very much like there was a little bit of a mini liquidity crisis. Right now with the country shut down, there's no real money coming in, but at the same time, bondholders and creditors need to be paid. The government's options are very simple. They've got to, assist the land bank, and National Treasury has indicated that they will, in providing liquidity to ensure that that their debts are paid. But I think the focus of Treasury right now is in, dealing with those departments that urgently need funding to address the COVID-19 outbreak in the country.
Do you see more defaults outside the land bank? Is this perhaps a normal now, given our liquidity crisis?
I would hope not. I mean, I think the SAA fallout is, going to be something that is going to be quite difficult for the country to deal with, given that you're going to get lots of people that are unemployed coming out of that. And of course, the general impact of COVID-19 is going to lead to job losses across the board. So I think the land bank, because of its strategic importance in food security in the country. Remember, these guys really fund the farmers that provide us with food. I think the government will prioritize the land bank, and similar state-owned entities that are considered strategically important will certainly receive attention from Treasury.
All right, thanks very much indeed. Nelson Nair there is from Sasfin. Tulis, that's a wrap for the numbers, at least for now.